When people think about fine art, what often comes to mind first is painting. Whether surreal, like the work of Salvador Dali, speckled with impressionist color, like Manet, or detailed and impossibly realistic, the convention of applying pigment to a surface to tell stories, share ideas, or document daily life serves as one of our earliest examples of the spark of human creativity. People were painting in caves over 30,000 years ago using dirt, ash, and animal fat. From ancient Egypt to the Renaissance, artists painted on walls, wood, and canvas to tell spiritual stories and political ones as well. By the 1800s, painters started breaking the rules, capturing light, movement, and emotion. And today, there's no shortage of experimentation in how these paintings come to life. But three major categories for the discipline are paintings rendered in oil, acrylic, and watercolor. Right. Wade, good evening.
Good afternoon.
Okay, good afternoon. It is a pleasure to see you once again and to be in conversation about the works that you have in the Visual Symphony exhibition at Hearn Fine Art. I was asking and will ask, where in the world are you joining us from this evening?
I'm in Las Vegas,
Okay.
Nevada, Pacific U.S. time. So
I
2 hours
love.
behind the both of you. I should take, assuming that
Okay.
both of you are in Central.
I'm in Connecticut, so I'm in Eastern Standard.
Okay, so you're 3 hours behind you. Yep,
Okay.
yep.
For to dive right in, for someone who might be encountering your practice for the first time, could you communicate a little bit about what the decision to pursue professional practice as an artist has looked like for you?
Wow, it was a transitioning from undergrad, actual from grad school. Well, actually, I'll take go back from undergrad. There was my instructors. They were all mentioning, how if you wanted to further for those that went right into the professional practice, either halfway in or either following it. But my thought was, more and more realizing, wow, I could actually, within my time of in the studio, I could actually make money off of this. It sounded, so surface, but it's like you do what you love, do what you want to do in life, and then things will reap from there. So, I mean, for a while, I just thought it was just like a dream. And then the more and more I would sell a piece here and there, actually with Hearn Fine Art. I did a sketch for a friend of mine. I used to skateboard, and then they took it to the frame shop, which just happened to be Hearn Fine Art when they were on Main Street. And then Garbo got in touch with me, and then eventually one piece sold. There were other pieces that artworks that sold prior to that, but when it became more established, when it quote unquote became more official, I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. And that was after undergrad and after grad school, within grad school. But yeah, it was getting a few pieces within magazines, selling a few pieces to clients, having a few exhibits. It's like, wow, this is people actually can make a living off this, or can really, if not full time, can really reap the benefits of what they enjoy to do in even partial time.
And speaking of the thing that you enjoyed to do, how is it that you arrived at specifically still lifes and portraits and landscapes as a central part of your visual practice?
I think it hit me, I would say, in undergrad, my sophomore year. The illustration was my major, and Jack Liu, I remember he was the head of the illustration department. And yes, illustration entailed various forms of visual artworks within magazines, within editorials, within books. But he so much stressed the foundations of drawing and figure drawing and painting. And he just ingrained that. And so that was a requirement for everyone in illustration department. I thought like that was very, very respectable.
Mm.
And yet, yes, I took painting classes, well, rather sessions in high school and even going back to junior high. But once, yeah, even within on the foundation year, the freshman year at Kansas City Art Institute, it was there, it was being spoken about, but it didn't hit us, meaning myself and other students, until we got to the illustration department. And it's like you have to learn how to draw the figure, you have to learn how to paint the figure, you have to learn how to compose, how to design, how to see color, how to mix color, how to frame, how to stage. I was like, wow, wow. So yeah, I mean, within that, I have a few images that I can scroll through to help sort of assist within these few questions, if I may.
Absolutely.
Okay. So this fast forward way past grad school, but this is the moment where it's like when it hit me, wow, what was, in hindsight, it's like, wow, this is, take any profession. In this case, this is visual arts. And then if you can be in a moment where you love what you're doing
Mm.
and it's actually being reaped back towards you, it's being compensated reciprocated in many ways with audience, with patrons, with gallery tours. So this goes back to the foundation of learning how to see. We all like, what are we looking at? Like, learning how to see color. And so I think I have another picture here. That piece that I'm working on is titled The Bongos. That was actually, let me see, what if there's another view? So there, okay, so this picture, you can actually see the bongos to the right. So this comprises so much of drawing, painting, color, design, composition, and staging. It goes back to what are the most attractive colors that we see when we're kids: red, blue, yellow. Those are also the primary colors. So they're the red bongos, and then it takes it forward into drawing and painting. How we see things. So we have basic shapes. Those are two cylindrical objects. Those drums. Why the drums? My friends at the time, and they still are, they given me within my involvements within dance performance, which came about through finishing grad school, through the dance performance being salsa primarily. So I took that object and I staged a still life. And this was actually doing a traveling exhibit throughout Clark County in Las Vegas. And it was titled, this preluded up to the title of this show, which extended through and find out, which is Passages, Faces, Street, and Land. So
Mm.
this was actually 2019. And so these pieces that you're seeing in the background, those are pieces that by yours truly was a solo exhibit. Those are all from life. That's in the Red Rocks. I'll use my cursor. That painting behind me is Niagara Falls and the Golden Gate and a few other pieces. So, but just that moment, if we could be within our moment, and and well, this picture right here, those are actually friends from salsa. So they paintings of them as well. So within that moment, when you're surrounded by like your inspirations of color, composition, and design, and then you're creating in front of an audience, it may seem like pressure, but it's actually once you get there and you get warmed up, get into it, it's pretty cool. So yeah, yeah.
Really wonderful. Out of
Mhm.
curiosity, in your painting practice specifically, is plein air your preferred approach to painting?
Yes, those were, painting live. So if all three of us were in the room, you and Austin, and then I set up the lighting out, to paint or sketch while we're having like this interview like in person, that would be something about the challenge that Jack Liu, Mark, John Ferry, some other students, also one of my classmates, underclassmen, but he was like 1 year behind me at School of Visual Arts, Gustav Blosch. We were really fascinated with being able to draw the figure, being able to create. Yes, we could sort of distort and make our own characterized figures, but just being able to capture that figure in person, capture it live. It's painting a picture that well, for me, it's like if I took a picture of those bongos as opposed to seeing it in life. You're hearing music on on Spotify, and then you go and see that band live, VIP seats right on stage. There's no, you get into a rush, you get into a moment where you're not thinking and you just react. And all those practices sort of come back to play. So yeah,
Really,
it's amazing too. It goes back to those Saturday morning cartoons when you see whatever it may be, and you find it fascinating. You see these worlds, and then all of a sudden you pick up a page, pencil and paper, and you can like draw and you can create a world and you can sort of bring yourself into it. And then eventually it's like a book. You can bring others into it. So these are one of those moments.
really wonderful. You've mentioned drawing, and I'm assuming working with charcoal and oils and a range of mediums. Really, as you've navigated the different materials that you could use, what has drawn you specifically to working with oil primarily as your medium?
Okay, and I think that I'll go ahead and scroll up to this one. So it was within drawing and, well, specifically painting. It's the versatility of oils. Even before I was aware of that, in hindsight, when I would see images, even going back to like maybe elementary, definitely junior high, definitely high school, art history class, all of those, it seemed, back then it seemed like that hour, that 45 minutes of class was like 3 hours. It's like, oh, another painting, another painting. But in hindsight, those were all oil paintings. And
Mhm.
so when I started to draw more and I started to, my practice started to become more attuned to that. And then I started to look back at artists who were actually had accomplished what I was looking to do. Those were oil paintings. Those were charcoal drawings. And oil itself, it's a versatile medium. It's rich in color. It's long. It stands the test of time. Meaning how it's treated and how it's maintained, over the years. But it's versatile, meaning you can go thick. You can splotch down like 2 or 3 inches of paint for a highlight, and then that atmosphere can just be a thin layer of gray, just right, just sitting above the canvas. So it has a lot of push and pull. You can work on it. If I'm working on a painting now and I wanted to step away for 2 hours and come back to it and still mix up that, that red or that green, that phthalo green, what have you. Yeah, the versatility, the longevity, and just the numerous, countless examples. Gosh, I had the opportunity to travel through Europe some years back and seeing the Mona Lisa in person, probably the most famous known work of art in human history. Yeah, and then seeing other paintings that at the Met in New York City or at the Getty Center in LA. I mean, gosh, there's so many examples, so many strong paintings about such strong draftsmen. It's like it's everywhere. So
Okay. The work that's featured in A Visual Symphony is a 2024 work entitled Lady Playing the Koto. Could you speak
yes.
a little bit about that work and its inspiration?
Yeah, that was, as I mentioned, just prior trip to Europe. I was in Europe for about a month working at an art gallery and accumulated some vacation time. And that was, scroll up some more. So this is in subway tunnels. They may call it the tube in Rome. And I was just walking along, and then there was a lady playing I just remember hearing like, okay, what is this? So I hear like a violin, along with the noise of the people going back and forth. There was like this violin sound or this stringed instrument. And then I came around the corner and there she was. And I'm thinking like, what the hell is that? So, it was odd. It was an odd shape. It was this large, long piece of wood, but my closest resemblance was the violin. So
Mm.
that just like took me back. And so I remember just like speaking, with her momentarily. And so doing a few quick sketches and then we took some photographs. I was in a rush. I was not expecting to set up any paints. I didn't bring any supplies. It was my first time in Europe.
Mm.
So my thing was just being prepared with speaking, whatever little bit of language through going through each city. So this was in Rome. It started in London, went to Rome, Granada, Madrid, and then back to London and catch the train, then the plane back to the US. So, but yeah, this the koto, it's let me go through my so many notes that I took down. But yeah, it's just an odd, overshaped, oversized instrument. Originated from China. It eventually found its way into Japanese culture. And what I didn't know at that time was that it's made to symbolize a dragon. And so when I thought back in hindsight, it's like, that makes sense. That makes sense. But I thought it was she's just calmly just standing there and she's adjusting with these white pieces are like little plastic pieces that you can adjust to move back and forth. And then with the strings, and then she was occasionally flipping her music sheet. But it
Mm.
was so pleasant and eloquent. And at times there were high pitches. It was like this. Yeah, the closest thing I could relate was a violin. But I've never seen that before. And even within my little bit of traveling, I'll call it a little bit because so many people do a lot more traveling. Yeah, I still have yet to see an instrument that odd, you know. But yeah, interesting. Yeah, originated from China and it symbolizes a dragon. And just I think it started off with an instrument for monks, so to speak, and eventually evolved its way through Chinese culture and into Japanese culture.
Okay. Wonderful. And I will say that sounds like a very varied amount of travel that you've gotten to experience. And it sounds like it's really enriched your practice and the perspectives that you're able to bring to the work. Beyond reflecting music as a subject in your work, either the musician or the instrument like the bongos, as a visual artist, you embody music in I think what you do in your dance practice. So I believe you're trained in salsa, in cha-cha, and mambo. Maybe there's more that I haven't named. Can you speak to how music facilitates and inspires your artistic outputs across mediums?
Sure, I'll go back as far as growing up. My father, he was actually a performer. He
Okay.
used to sing. He was on stage, and so, but when we were kids, as much as I can remember being cognizant of hearing Michael Jackson, the Gap Band, Teddy Pendergrass, we would run into. I'll feel like this. We were not dancing. We were just moving. What we were doing, I don't know what we were doing, but we were just like, wow, this is nice. This is cool. So we were just being silly, acting crazy. So when two, three, four, that's when I can recall hearing just music and sound, you know. And so yeah, that fast forward to my two brothers, Jerome and Carl, and then my cousin Bubby, who's also an artist. We were breakdancing, trying to breakdance, trying to do what we could do. And then in junior high, through high school, through college, going to the school dances, whatever college dances, and the little hip hop sort of battles. So, but yeah, it was, and I'll go ahead and scroll up. So yeah, but yeah, so let me go ahead and scroll to this picture partially. But yeah, so salsa, New York style salsa, also known as mambo, also known as New York nightclub style. And that was, let me scroll. That's Ned Williams. I'll come back to him, but I'm just going to scroll to so many pictures I was going through trying to compile it all together. Okay, Eddie Torres and his wife Maria Torres, the lady in the middle. So grad school, New York City School of Visual Arts, 21st Street. I was still in touch with one of my friends, Ephraim, who I met in my sophomore year, my freshman year at Kent Art Institute undergrad. He moved back to New York. And so we kept in touch when I told him, hey, I'm going to grad school in New York. Like, whoa, let's kick it, let's hang out. And then, I'm in school, and then he's like, yo, my sister and my mother, they were there's this salsa class, there's an actual class. You want to go try it out? And we were just like, I just remember being like just too cautious, like to take the class. And I think it wasn't until once school had finished that I had mind space to actually, absorb it. So we went and took the class. And I walked into the studio on the second floor, 8th Avenue, and it was actually Maria's class. She taught the beginner one class. And then
Mhm.
I was there for a few weeks and I, graduated, whatever, or I was given the permission to go to Eddie Torres level two. And so, yeah, it was New York style salsa or just salsa in general. There is New York style, there is Cuban style, there's LA style, there's dancing on one, there's dancing on two. But it was walking into this classroom, there was a large studio and there was about 60, at least 60 people, couples, and that just blew me away. It's like, wow. I mean, growing up, for me growing up, we were just like, if it wasn't in the living room, if it wasn't at family reunions, if it wasn't at picnics, we were just like, more of like line dancing or just like there was a circle and we'd all do our little dance. But this is actually like a fully structured dance class where you're merging this street style personality with structure. And so
Mhm.
that really took me away. I was like, wow. And so that actually seeing it in person, actually, well, I take that back. Within that year prior, I remember my friend Efrain and I, we went to a club in Times Square. It was a multi-level, multi-genre club. They had hip hop, they had house reggae, and salsa. And I just remember walking through the salsa room, and the light was it was lit to where the couple was dancing. It was like a silhouette, and they
Mhm.
were just morphing. You could just see like their shapes. It's like they were morphing in and out. It's like, what? Like, how are they doing that? It's like they're magicians. But seeing it in person, seeing like as opposed to seeing it on TV, seeing the extroverted, colors and makeups and costumes and the personalities on TV as opposed to seeing it in person, where there was just these two people in a room. They were not showing out, they were not trying to show out for anyone. They were just communicating back and forth. Like, wow, that really shook me. So going back to Eddie's class, it was like when my friend had mentioned we should try out the class, it was like, cool. We're actually waiting for, but it's funny, we were actually waiting for his mother and his sister to take the class, and then they were going to give us the evaluation, and we are going to say, okay, let's try it out or not. But
Mhm.
we we ended up going to the class and then seeing it. Yeah, the first class with Maria, I was hooked. I was just, had no words, I had no questions. I was just in awe. I had like 10 left feet, it seemed like, trying to learn this one, two, three, five, six, seven, not only with the feet, with the hands, with everything,
Mhm.
yeah, it was something else, something else. So let me scroll back up. Yeah, I'll scroll back up to, yeah, okay.
Okay.
So, yeah.
To piggyback off
Um,
of one of the words that you'd used, you talked about structure and music, and I think visual art can range from tightly structured to loose and improvisational. Where
mhm.
along that spectrum do you think your work falls, and what parallels have you noticed across the mediums that you engage with?
Okay, so yeah, I would say it's a balance between both for me. And I have a few examples. This piece right here, it's 2.5 inches by 2.5 ballpoint pen. This is my great grandfather, George Lewis Stewart. And so I don't know if you were, it was what, the COVID, the COVID era show exhibit 2020 when I had the book on display and I had the large family portrait. but this was my great grandfather. But yeah, so going to this is a I'll show an example. So this is a structured piece, meaning that I definitely plan to do a small intimate piece, and then with the practice of drawing the figure, and then with the ballpoint pen, I really had to be focused on that piece. I mean, there is a little bit of leeway with the hair and sort of the looseness of the application, but it was definitely when you're working at such a small sort of 2.5, where you feel like you have to kind of crawl through a little tiny little hole and sort of point, 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 point. You can't there's less room to play with broad strokes and then just not thinking. You want to have, or at least for me, I want to have some idea about, how I'm starting off, first of all, in proportion from eye to eye to nose to mouth to the ears to bringing in more personality with the hair and then to the tie to the lapel to the blazer. And then so that is a more structured piece. And this pulls back a little bit more. And then we go to this piece right here. I don't know if the screen will capture all of it. This was a little bit more improvisational, meaning that some years back, this is in front of the Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas on the Strip. And I guess you could say it's like right at the crux of the Strip where Flamingo meets Las Vegas Boulevard. And for a few summers, I would go out and sketch and just to get out of the studio. And so this is me, well, that's my viewpoint of me doing a very sporadic, continuous line contour. Continuous mining meaning that once you put the pen down, you keep it down, and then you sort of your eye follows the activity of where you want to create the focal point. So we're going from keeping it down, and once again, these are people passing by. I mean, there are no actors. I wasn't telling. I could not tell. Well, I could, but who knows how well that would have played out. But
Mm.
as this lady right here, she may have been standing there maybe for a minute or two on her phone. This person right here with the bag, maybe half a second. There were people sitting up on the wall as the Fountains of Bellagio would play every 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So you can just imagine walking along, north and south along the strip, which is similar to Hollywood Boulevard, which is similar to going out 42nd Street in Times Square, the busyness, the bustliness, and trying to capture that. So that at that point, that structure comes into play. But once you get there, once you get on stage, once you're about to perform, all that thinking and thought just, to a degree, it goes out the window and you'd have to like react. And so in that sense, it becomes improvisation because you don't know that next, all of a sudden you find that perfect pose. Oh, here's the person that I wanted to stand this way. And all of a sudden they leave and then someone else comes in. So you have to, within that person leaving and the person entering, you merge these two stories of this person, and then so you get like this merge of the bottom part and the top part. So that's very, I mean, you're talking about 20, 30, or 40 people, I mean, if that's not the definition of improvising and reacting off of someone else's thought that you do not know, that's something. And on top of that, why is this? It was sunny that afternoon. It was sunny like when I was sketching, and within minutes, a storm had came in.
Oh no.
And so talk about improvisational. We can't stop the earth. We can't stop Mother Nature from watering the earth. So yeah, literally the storm came in. I was like, oh my. So it literally just started pouring down. And then I just remember I had everything on a traveling easel, but I had to pack everything up. And then the way I had it set up on my traveling easel, it was like that. This drawing would, I think I had it clamped. It was in a binder, like 11 by 14. It was like in a binder. So I remember folding it back over, but by then it was too late. So yeah, it crumpled up to what you're seeing right now, and that's literally on my wall to my right. So yeah, it's
Okay.
I just call it the at the Bellagio, and yeah, that's so from sketching people live that you don't even know to getting rain. Yeah, I was wet. Yeah, that was everyone was wet that afternoon. But yeah, so going from just outdoors noise and environment, buses honking, people talking, people screaming, yelling, to this quiet, intimate moment where you have to. So, but yeah, to structure and improvisation, but within both, as you can see within the tear, there is some improvisation, and within this improvisation, yeah, there is some structure to create that perspective, to create that environment. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's a
That's a
balance for me.
beautiful through line.
I'm sorry.
I think that's a really beautiful through line. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So visual and sonic and even physical expressions all feel like they draw from something universal and deeply human. In the past, you've said there's a timing and a rhythm that speaks a language only the body can communicate. In your view, what is it about music and visual art that speaks to similar emotional truths that are vital to the moment we find ourselves in?
Okay. And let me scroll down. I'll go back to what was that? Yeah, so this was actually a while back. I was occasionally posting, I called them, and they still are called brown paper poems. And I was going back to, I remember I had that phrase on my website at once, and I remember I had it like in a bio or something, and then, but it's since been edited. And so I went back and researched. And so if I may, I'll read out the poem if
Yes.
that's cool. So okay, so brown paper poems, passages by Wade Hampton. Okay, and it goes as such. There is a timing and a there's a timing and rhythm that speaks a language only the body can communicate. Without thought, feelings emerge to create a relationship with sound. Through movement, the narrative composes a beginning, a pinnacle, and the never-ending musicality. It is through dance I step to experience and convey such a language. So, and I was going to say earlier that a lot of my responses sort of interplay almost into each one. And with dance and with dance and with visual arts. And I can go back to, let me scroll back, and this is why I placed this picture up here with Ned Williams. This is with the dance Catherine Dunham technique. Long story short, Catherine Dunham troupe, female black dancer. She danced with her troupe back during the stormy weather, new all black production back in 1943. Fast forward, it's been fused to all the dance schools in America. But Ned Williams, may he rest in peace, he passed a few years ago. He said, the body never stops moving, meaning that, yes, we're going to see dynamic jumps and lifts and turns, but even when you're still, the
Mm.
body is still, when you're quote unquote still, the body is still, there are transitions. You may have heard, the both of you may have heard music, there's always transitions. You know, transitions are so important within visual arts, within dance. The body never stops moving. Scroll back down to, okay, even I'll just stop at this piece right here. Even there might have been a slow moment where I just technically stopped, but my body was motioning to move this way and pick that up. It's the thought is always you're always moving, whether it's if it's a paintbrush on the canvas. When you're in that sort of moment, when you find yourself in that zone, I would read a lot about John Singer Sargent and how he would, if he was painting a still life or someone sitting there, there would be times where he was just in thought. And then at any given moment, he would just like rush and just dab the canvas and then come back. And then so I go back and forth through figure drawing class, to painting class, to where I mean, so much stuff through practice. And when you actually get into that moment, so many things have to be sort of zoned out where you're just in this moment of creation, of moving. And that's within music, it's within dance on a stage, whether I'm performing or whether I'm social dancing, the music might stop. And then even if it doesn't stop, you're dancing, you're moving, even at a high tempo, you're still slowing it down, so to speak. Yeah, movement, transitions, it's within visual arts, it's within putting that pencil or that brush on the canvas. It's within movement. Yeah, it's such a, I mean, the contrast is that this is visual arts, it's on a 2D plane, and then performing arts is 4D, it's performance, but there's so much similarities.
That's such a wonderful way to think about moving through the world, that constant motion and the things that it creates. Thank you. One of the gallery's considerations was how different practices could be in conversation. Are there any contemporary or even historical artists? I know you've mentioned a few that come to mind when you think of who your practice continues to be in conversation with.
Well, I would have to say I'm not conversating of so much of with people that are saying, you know, we compare you to this person, we compare you to that person. I can base that off of my influences. I know actually, I'll go back to, this was a while back, about a little over 10 years ago. Actually, Jack Liu, my undergrad professor, he was in Kansas City. He had moved to Florida, and I was visiting a friend. And I went to go see him when he was living in Florida. And then at the time, he was asking, is there anyone else doing what you're doing? You know, meaning crafting visual art to such a finite showcase and dance performance. And I was mentioning, I'm sure there's so much talent out there, so many influences. But I'll just kind of speak on that with my influences. And so this painting, it comprises of books from Diego Velázquez, from Rembrandt, from John Singer Sargent, from Edgar Degas. Within visual arts, those some people that are within the involved within or educated within the world of arts, within figurative painting, within some of the history, they may pull some of that inspiration. Oh yeah, well, I was looking at this painting. Oh yeah, now when he mentions that, I see that. But yeah, it goes from, gosh, to once again we go back to dance, to Eddie Torres, because even before Eddie and Maria had found out that I was a visual artist, they had reference to, I would occasionally he would pull certain students out to do demos with a partner. And then he would often say, this guy he's an artist. And at that point, I'm still low key now, but at that point, I was not trying to tell anyone that I'm a visual artist. It's just, I'm pretty much laying in the cut type of guy, but he was mentioning that word artist. And so when they eventually found that out, it's like, wow, that's two and two together. So, I mean, gosh, dance influences, I'm inspired by Eddie Torres. That's where I started, my structured dance. My sort of rigorous training and practice, besides being inspired by something I've never seen before, that goes back to, I'm scrolling back and forth because so many questions intertwined. That goes back to Ned Williams. He really defined a sense of, accountability as a dancer, because of dancing is a dangerous activity. I mean, you land, you jump, you can break your bones, you can have hip surgeries after so many years. So when I was chatting with some of my friends, it's like that have taken that class, they go back to, well, while we took that technique class, we took Catherine Dunham class, or just a sense of structure, as we're relating back to some of the other questions, but also going through some of my other influences. Excuse me. Yeah, so I mentioned John Singer Sargent, Edgar Degas, Rembrandt, Diego Velázquez, Frank Duveneck is another one. My influences with dance, Ned Williams, Eddie Torres, Maria Torres, here's a picture again. I placed it in there as well. Influences, I'm very inspired by, not only within the visual arts, but also through design. I'm inspired by the most profitable company in Earth's history, Apple. I see things as not only as a drawer, but as a stage, as a composer, in the rule of thirds, the lighting and the simplicity. I'm very attracted to, when we go back to John Singer Sargent, I would read about him. Just people would recite how he would just complete a painting with so few strokes, or at least go through that attempt. Simplicity. Create more with fewer. And so I know with Apple's overall principle is just create. To do more with less. And so yeah, I look at Apple's keynotes. Yearly WWDC. I mean, is in process. I watch that keynote. And yes, I'm a visual artist. Yes, I'm a dancer, but I relate those keys of impact, those keys when I'm meaning the points, those focal points. I go back to Diego Velázquez creating a red color focal point. You would find those focal points, those color surprises within an Apple presentation. And then we're going back to structure. We're going back to where we're kind of delving into various mediums. You're seeing on this is actually an Apple store. I participated in a presentation, and I'm showcasing some of my renderings on the iPad. That was actually at the Getty Center, of a sculpture of a black servant at that time period. But yeah, so all these things are coming into play. And then yeah, design, building within visual arts, within painting, within design. This is a 4-story cat house. And so I'm seeing the same things that I see in a painting within this.
Mm-hmm.
You start off with basic shapes. You mask a basic shape, and then you create the details and you create the structure, how it's going to build and stay strong. So, and then yeah, I'll go through, and then dancing. What I'm holding in my hand here are called claves, CLAVE. The clave. It's a key. It's a structure within, not only within Latin music, but it goes back to African music, and there are different notes, there are different keys of a clave. A 2-3, a 3-2, a rumba clave. As
Mm-hmm.
variations of West African dance within the clave strikes differently. That's wow, influence. Yeah, I can go through this. Yeah, this is yeah. As we're seeing in Transformers, color. I mean, I'm seeing the same thing in this photograph, which I compose, the red, the yellow, the blues, the structure, the story. Why did I compose, Lift Ticket and Sandstorm and and Strong Arm and Chase and Medics and Ratchet and well, this was stories. I can sort of, not to delve too far into, but why do we continue to paint or draw or
Mhm.
dance on stage stories? And this was in response. It was a small way to say, hey, the LA fires, which are still, I saw those just a few weeks ago, the results of them. And it was a small way to create a story and say, hey, not to intrude, but just to bring recognition and say, hey, donate. Gosh, books, The Lord of the Rings, The Imagination, On the Laps of Gods, Come Hell or High Water. These books were given to me pretty much in the process of the Scipio government project through some sculptors and through others, designing brand identity that goes back to, gosh, so many things, how you package your presentation. Yeah. And then these are just other examples, just objects. That's my desk. I'm trying to make it look like it's floating.
Yeah.
It's like my idea of, it's the helipad from MCU, the Avengers. They have the helipad, that large
Mhm.
ship. So that's like it's like it's floating, but it's not floating. And I can actually stand on that, kid you
Okay.
not, and it won't fall. But yeah. And they're just other examples. Oh, my, yeah, speaking of building, I built this dance floor which I can fold up and take with me and dance. So all these things, these come into play, So yeah.
Well,
So when it
brilliant. It's really wonderful hearing how rich I think all the points of inspiration that are inspiring your practice are. You touched on this a little bit maybe already when you're talking about the structures that you're thinking about, but as someone that's been developing and refining your craft for some time now, what are the challenges and questions that continue to invigorate your art practice, and what are you looking forward to?
well, it's like the world is getting smaller. We're interacting with more people. Our stories are becoming, whether we like it or not, we're becoming more visible. And that could mean peer pressure. It could mean sort of discussions. It could mean back and forth, but just to continue to have some, as things get small and smaller, where is our mental space where we can see freely what our journey or our path is, and to create, once again, going back to the stories, what do we see as our own story that makes us an individual? And I think yeah, there was some, I think actually, I think I kind of, I wouldn't say went off. Yeah, it was technology. Me as a visual artist, as you can see with some of the other examples, I've welcomed technology.
Mm.
And but my thing is, I do find drawing on a glass sheet really cool. But when I can get back to being outside and painting and drawing or sketching someone in person, that I find just as gratifying. So I really want to be able, I'm hoping, years and years down the line, where I'm still holding on to that, where we're
Mhm.
not all like AI robots. And that we can still, have utilize the five senses,
Mhm.
where I can meet someone in a coffee shop and then start sketching them or paint them the next day, and or go to a concert, hear some music, or just step out in the morning and hear the birds and maybe do some sketching. Yeah, those are just some of a few of the challenges. Few of the challenges, as the world gets smaller, as technology gets involved more and more into our lives. Yes, I welcome it. This is how we're actually conversing right now. But yes, it was just as gratifying to see like the both of you in person. It's just as gratifying to mix the paints, to go to the store and see what kind of colors that I want to get for my next painting. So yes,
Wonderful. You mentioned that some of your training in the visual arts happened in New York at the School of Visual Art, and you've been part
yes.
of communities in New Jersey and Arkansas. You're currently in Las Vegas. Could you speak to the kind of texture and influence the material and sonic landscapes of where you're engaging in your practice influences it?
Wow, let me scroll down, scroll past that. That is, oh yeah, okay. So, so this is, I'm gonna scroll through a few more images. It'll help sort of describe and maybe sort of reach you hopefully sooner with as far as like understanding. Yes, this could be any countryside. This could be in, who knows, in Ireland somewhere. This is in Marlton, Arkansas. So establishing a having a rooted sense and appreciating the outdoors. And I think even before I got into drawing and painting, my brothers and sister and I, we were always outdoors, or at least most of the time, my cousins. And so when I fast forward to appreciating as you highlighted, drawing or painting at plein air, that's where that influence, sort of birthed from. And yeah, this is feeding the cows in the morning, but just being outdoors, experiencing nature. And this is early enough in the morning where you can kind of see the dew mist that's in the air. You can smell flowers. So yeah, that influence, rooted from Arkansas, from the small town, so it's from the city, was that's where it started. And I'm going to sort of be going back and forth here. And so the influence, this is when Her and Fine Art was down in the River Market. And I was visiting one summer and I was actually constructing it was like an installation piece. So you're having the inspiration, I'm back at within my roots, back on the grounds of Little Rock. I'm in the gallery, but I'm actually involved within a performance, not dancing per se, but I'm actually moving and I'm actually creating, and I'm creating this cityscape of New York, the skyline of New York City. And so I'm literally constructing that. I bought all the materials, and so that was actually a performance that I basically create a studio within the gallery. So you're seeing all these practices come together. You have New York. So now everyone that was at that exhibit, they could feel like, at least my hopes were that they could feel like, wow, they're inside their studio, their high-rise studio, looking out, downtown. There's Empire State Building, there's a Hudson River, but it's just it's a performance, it's an installation, and there's obviously I'm placing a few paintings, and then people are walking into the studio, family right there, yeah, and then so we go from New York City, or from Arkansas, you know, finishing schooling and being heavily, heavily inspired in New York to where I just bleed it for the most part. And then, but traveling, spending a lot of time on the West Coast and Los Angeles was there's a whole different sensibility. New York, you can see like if we were to sort of imagine ourselves, this is our studio, and we have this large window. We've just finished this painting, and now we're opening up the shades, and we're looking out, and you have this grid, you have the concrete jungle, and then you go to the beautiful weather of LA, and you go to the West Coast. Gosh, this Sequoia National Forest, the expanse of being outdoors, how small we are. That played a being humble as an artist. I think for the most part, a lot of us are humble, because we understand the practice of achieving just the smallest steps to even just one part of a piece. And then seeing this large 300, 400 foot tall tree, it's humbling. And that's where video practice comes into play with my camera. And here we go back to New York, the Flatiron Building, at 23rd Broadway and Fifth. Yeah. And so we're back in the grit and the grind. And yeah, the influence. Wow. The why certain, I'm gonna quickly scroll back up. I'm gonna scroll back up to that family portrait. You have just a push and pull. Let me see, where is it? So give a better example. Oh, it's all the way up here. Yeah. You have delicate parts, quiet parts, and then you have broad strokes, which is within molding these figures, there's is this broad rush stroke of being in New York and these delicate parts of maybe being up on a mountain in California or the quiet mornings in Arkansas. So all those things you may not think about it at the time, but they all come into play. They all come into play. But yeah. And see, I'm just auto scrolling. Yeah. And yep. So yeah, and so they all have an influence, the humbling moment, the 20-year anniversary of 9/11. And yeah, so yeah, plein air. So yeah, so being outdoors, being out in the open,
Mhm.
we're not, we're not, sort of creeping through the buildings in New York City, or dodging people. We're up on a mountain. And so yeah, those are just people actually they were there from New Zealand, I think, you
Okay.
know. Yeah, so they're painting, and there are a number of people coming up walking by, and so they were like, just watching. I was like, hey, let's let's get this picture. So but yeah, so the fluence from East Coast to West Coast has a huge play and down to, even with the painting, as you're seeing on the right side, you're seeing more detailed parts and then broad strokes. Yeah, yeah.
Really wonderful to think about a studio practice where the world truly seems to be your studio, as opposed to just the four walls in a particular city. In addition to being an incredible artist and performer, an extension of your practice is instructing in dance. Could you speak to how you see your role as an educator in relation to your studio practice?
Wow. Yeah. I always kind of push back at that because I always feel like I'm learning when I teach. But yes,
Mhm.
and we don't think about this often, or at least I don't, but yet and still there are people who someone's always being influenced by what you do. Someone to whatever degree, whether it's positive or negative. And in this case, I've been given an opportunity to create a story through body movement. That's at Club 27 in Little Rock, or through, so in essence, the West Las Vegas Arts Center here in Las Vegas, dance classes. People, that's the brother to the left, Will, and his wife, Connie, in the back, just to on my right side of the picture. He one afternoon he was just complimenting and just how it just dance opened them up, even just as a couple in communication. It created another language for them to share, and so they were able to express not only just technically learning like these steps, but it just opened up more vocabulary within them. And so like, wow, it's humbling. It's humbling. But yeah, I mean, just more on a surface level, what I hope to, what I've been inspired by from my dance teachers or art teachers, I hope it carries some inspiration. Yeah, and this was at an art. This was arranged through Hearn Fine Art. This was at the down in El Dorado
Mm.
a while back, and the gallery had arranged all this. So they had arranged a dance workshop on the theater stage, and this is a painting workshop in the hat behind stage. So, but these are just I'm sharing my thoughts on. We were painting a still life. There's another. Yeah, there's a picture. So I set up a still life, and we are given the practice to basically share. It's basically creating communication, and there is some involvement of sharing what in this case traditional still life painting, representational still life painting, what I felt might create an impact for the canvas. But it was more so communicating with people, just meeting another person, sharing stories, sharing personalities. And yeah, so this is in West Hollywood. This is at a park in Las Vegas. These are some events at Dance Now LV studio where I teach at weekly, some of
Mhm.
these social events. Yeah, so I mean, people are inspired. They may say, "Oh, it got us out of the house for the week. Oh, I lost 5 pounds in 2 weeks." Or they were inspired and they're performing and they're traveling. Yeah, I mean, we teach every moment, that we're sharing our knowledge, or whether if it's within dance or within a painting, those are quote unquote books which are being created, and hopefully they travel in to someone else and they're being passed along. And yeah, so this was actually an exhibit where I did like a walkthrough tour, but in a sense it was like, we were both sharing our thoughts. I was sharing my thoughts with the audience. And yeah, I often pull back. So I was like being technically, yes, that's me, that's myself teaching, but I'm
Right.
constantly learning. It's like the more and more you learn, you realize, wow, there's a whole valley, a whole other universe of things that you don't know. But that makes it good because then that energy, that lust, that passion that will always be there. So
Wonderful. Hearn Fine Art will be celebrating 37 years dedicated to the enduring stories that art tells and the emotional inheritance it provides. If there is one thing that you would want someone new to your work to take away from it, what would it be?
I would say timeless with this. When you see whichever one of my paintings or drawings, I remember with Renee, I was part of an exhibit at the River Market District. I think when the gallery was there, and there was a monotone painting. It was a landscape, and I think it's actually sitting on the west wall in Garbo's office, up above the bookshelf. There was a gentleman that came in. I was there, and Renee was around. We were sort of kind of around the area, just talking to people, and he just started crying. He literally just started crying and shedding tears. And she spoke to him, I spoke to him, and he was just so happy and in joy. Maybe it created a moment that when he was a kid. I'm not sure. We were never able to figure out why. But in a sense of going back to, there was a time and a place where it really spoke to him, where a grown elder man, just started shedding tears, in front of my painting. Yeah, timelessness. Does this piece fit? And I'll scroll down. Let me see, where are we? Where are we? Oh, does this self-portrait, does this speak, 500 years before? And if we were to go, 500 years in the future, you know, give or take, the attire would be different. Would it speak the same? Does it, who is that person? Where are they standing? Wait a second. I've been there before. Wait, I grew up there. So it's does this speak? Does it stand the test of time? So can a young child up to an elder, can they relate to this piece? So yeah, let's say timelessness.
Wonderful. Wade, thank you so much for all of your deeply personal and thoughtful responses. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you. Your work in conversation with the other artists in this show is such a beautiful note to mark the milestone of 37 years of sharing work. And I cannot wait to see more of your work if and when it is on view.
Yes. And I just wanted to make one, I think it may have rolled over into some of the other questions, just going back to, I think it was what invigorates or what continues to invigorates. Yes, I mentioned technology and how the world is getting smaller. I just want to go back through, there are other moments which have affected me, some more directly, which which really, made me think about so many other things. And I'll scroll back up. Yeah, about 4.5 years ago, I almost went blind. Yeah, yeah, I almost went blind. It was fall, it was late summer, COVID 2020. I was in Arkansas, then I was traveling back to Vegas. I was taking a walk on the strip, getting some air, and then all of a sudden I developed some, like, a rash on my face. And then it kept growing and growing. And I went to the urgent care, and then the doctors stated that you had a case of shingles, and it affected only the right side of my face, which was, yeah, it was, yeah. So the doctor said, and then the next day, Monday, I went to my primary care doctor. They don't know each other. They're both credited professionals, and they both said, you were this close to going blind. And so it was an internal nerve issue and an external issue where bumps and rashes developed. And so there was at one point when I was back here, it's like, well, I thought I'm going to have to move back with my parents in my grandmother's house. I'm going to be blind. What do I do? And so that put me in, yeah, these are actual images of, it's a painful experience. It was like nerve pounding for about a month or so. So thinking the thought of going without sight, I was like, wow. So sort of fast forwarding it to being out in Sequoia National Forest, being outside and just sort of, I was always thinking, like, let me just open my eyes. Okay, my eyes are still working. I can still see what I'm painting. I can still draw. Maybe if I lost my sight, I could feel it. And then this is the next year, actually almost a year later. This was Hurricane Ida, which is one of the more recent hurricanes in history. This is 2021. The Scipio portrait had pretty much been confirmed. Most of it was done. And I was actually driving to New York for a month of just networking everything. And I was on the phone with Garbo. It was a three-way call with Garbo, with John Gill, the client, and with Colin with the CALS library system. And Hurricane Ida I had to stop and pull over to rest stop. That's the remnants of Hurricane Ida, a hurricane which yep. So thinking about that, and then getting to my location, my stay, and then finding out that the hurricane was so ravaging in New York City that the bed that I was going to stay in was being dripped up through water through the electrical faucet, which means something could have happened to me. So it was, yeah, yeah. So it was humbling. so so yeah, with respect, that's what continues to invigorate me, and that's what gives respect to everything that we discuss and to the longevity and the institution, as I like to call it, of Hearn Fine Art. Appreciation for everything. So
Thank you so much, Wade.
thank you, Luis.